Welcome to Power BI Tutorials. This video will show you how to create a date table in Power BI using Power Query M-code. If you already know how to use Power Query and just want to copy the M-code for the whole date table, you can get this from my blog, and I've put a link to the post in the description below. Before you start writing any DAX, you need to turn off the Power BI Auto Date Time option. This is switched on by default when you set up a Power BI project and is great if you need basic calendar columns, but should be turned off if you're creating your own date table. To do this, go up to the File menu, Options and Settings, Options, and then click on the Data Load under the Current File heading and untick Auto Date Time. The minimum requirement for a Power BI date table is a table with at least one column containing dates. This date column has to span across 4 years, it cannot contain blanks or have missing dates, and all dates must be unique. To start building the date table, you first need to create a blank query. So go up to the Home menu, Get Data, and select the Blank Query option. This opens up the query in the Power Query window. First, you need to rename the empty query to something sensible, and I'll rename mine to Date Table. Now you have to create the date column in the query. So go up to the View menu and click on Advanced Editor. This opens the Editor window and is where we'll start to write the code to create the table. You should note that mQuery language is case sensitive. Start by creating a set of variables. The first is start and is the date you want your date table to start at. So I'm going to put mine to the 1st of January 2000. The second variable is the date you want the date table to finish at. So I'm going to set my date to the 31st of December 2023. Remember, your date table has to span across whole years. The third variable is a list of dates from the start date to the end date. For this, we'll use the list.dates function. This function has 3 parameters. The first is the start date, so we'll use the start variable. The second is the number of dates you want in the list. So to calculate this, we'll use the number.from function. So number.from end variable minus number.from start variable plus 1. The third parameter is the duration of each list element, and for us that's going to be 1 day per step. So put hash duration brackets 1, 0, 0, 0, and that defines a day. Finally, replace the bottom line of the code with the date list variable. Then click Done, and here you can see that the date list has been created. Even though this looks like a table, it is still just a list of dates. To convert it to a table, first make sure you're in List Tools Transform menu and then select To Table. Click OK on the dialog box that appears, and then the list is converted to a table. First, you have to rename the column and set it to date. So do this by right-clicking on the heading and selecting Rename. Then you click here to set the format of the column to a date format. You now have a usable date table with a single column of dates. However, it will be far more useful if you add additional columns such as month name, year, quarter, etc. And these can quickly be added from the Power Query menus. To do this, go to the Add Columns menu, select the Date button, and from the drop-down list, select Day and then Day. To add another column, click back on the Date column heading, go back up to the Date button and select month and month name. And to add a year column, again go up to the date button and select year and year. Next I want to make a quarter column, so click on the date column heading, up to the date drop down and select quarter, quarter of year. Now I want the quarter column values to say Q1, Q2, Q3 or Q4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. To do this, you need to edit the code here. So after the word each, add Q in quotation marks, ampersand, and then number 2 text. And this converts the quarter value to a text. You can now see that the Q has been added to the values in the table. But the column type hasn't changed and is still showing as numeric. You need to change this to text, otherwise it will error when loading back into Power BI. Under the Home menu, click on the first button and select Close and Apply to load this table into Power BI. But before you can use this table in the data model, you need to set it up as a date table. To do this, click on the 3 dots next to the table name and select Mark as Date Table. Then select the date column from the drop-down list, click OK, and now your table is ready to be used in the Power BI data model. You've now added basic date columns using the Date menu in Power Query. You can continue to add columns from the date drop-down list, but if you want to add non-standard columns such as financial month, financial quarter and weekend flags, then you'll need to start some coding. Don't worry, you can use the Power Query interface to simplify the task, and the rest of this tutorial will walk you through adding these additional 16 date columns. I've listed each column in the description below along with the time they appear in the video, so you can jump ahead to the column you're interested in. To start adding new columns, you need to open up the Power Query window again. To do this, click on the Transform Data button in the Home menu. The first column I'm going to add is the month number column. This is really useful as it can be used to order the month name column chronologically. So go up to the Add Column menu and click on the Custom Column button. First you change the column name, so we'll put month number, and now you can start writing the code. For the month number we simply use the date.month function to get the month number from the date field. Press OK, and then you can see that the column has been added to the table. You do want to make sure that the column is in the correct format, and this one should be set as a whole number. The second column I'm going to add is a short month name column. So for January, the value will be JAN, February will be FEB, etc. So again, click on the Custom Column button and set the column title. I'm just going to put month short for this one. For this column, you use the text.start function, and the first parameter is the month name, and the second parameter is 3. So this will bring back the first 3 letters of the month name. OK to add it to the table, and then I'll set the format of the column to text. The next column I'm going to add is the month letter column. Again, this uses the text.start function with the month name from the date field as the first parameter and 1 as the second parameter. This returns the first letter of the month name. And again, I'm going to change the format to a text field. Before I add the next column, I want to explain the Applied Steps panel on the right here. Each time you add a column or change the field type, a new step is added. This means that you can go back to any of the steps and edit them by clicking on the cog. So this step is the creation of the month number column. And if you wanted to change any of the code or column name, you can do that here. You can also rename the step by right-clicking on it, selecting properties and giving it a sensible name. This is useful for support purposes and if you think you'll be changing the table at any point in the future. Now back to adding columns, and the next is the short year column. So up to the Add Columns menu and the Custom Column button. This I'll name Year Short, and I'll want the value to display the last 2 digits of the year. And for this you use the text.end function. The first parameter is the year from the date field, and I use the number to text function to change this year number to a text. Then I put 2 to return the last 2 characters from that year. The next column I'm going to add is the month year column, and for this I want the value to be the short month name followed by the full year. Again, I'm going to use the text start function to get the first 3 letters of the month name, and then I want to put a space, so ampersand, speech marks, space, speech marks, ampersand, and then we put the full year, but we need to change it to a text string using the number to text function. And there we go, it's added to the table. Now I'll add the year month number column. This can be used to order months over a series of years. So December 2020 would be 202012, and January 2020 would be 202001. First, get the year from the date field and convert it to a text string using the number to text function. Then put an ampersand, and now we need the month number as a text string, but all months have to have 2 digits. So January would be 01, February 02, etc. To get this, use the pad.start function to put a 0 before the month numbers 1 to 9, so from January to September. Here it's been added to the table, and I'll set the format of the column to whole number so it can be used to order the month year column. Now I'm going to create the financial month column, and this is where the code gets a little trickier. I want the financial year to start in April, but if you want it to start from a different month, just change the code and replace the 4 with the month number your financial year starts at. For this column, I'm going to create an if statement. So, if the month from the date field is greater than or equal to 4, so April, then get the date month number minus 4 plus 1. Else, get the date month number plus, open brackets, 12 minus 4, close brackets, plus 1. Next is the financial quarter column, and again my financial year starts in April, but you can change the 4 in the code to the month number your financial year starts at. To create the financial quarter column, use an if statement. So if the month from the date field is less than 4, speech marks, capital Q, speech marks, ampersand, and then number to text, open brackets, and we'll use the roundup function on the month from the date field, -4, +1, +12, close brackets, divided by 3, and 2 more close brackets. Else, speech marks, capital Q, speech marks, ampersand, and again, number.toText, and the roundup function on the month from the date field, -4, +1, divided by 3. It does look complicated, but it does work and it brings back the financial quarter. Always remember to change the format of the column as you go along. The next column I'm creating is the financial year column. And again, I'm setting the financial year to start in April. You can change the 4 in the following code to the financial month you need the year to start at. To create the financial year column, I use the add months function to minus the financial month number from the date field. And then I get the year from this new date. It sounds complicated, but it's just a add months function within a date.year function. So you start with the date.year function, brackets, and then date.addMonths. And then you have the date from the date field. And then instead of adding months, you're minusing them. You -4 and then -1. Remember, you can replace the 4 with your financial year start month number. I'm now going to create a user-friendly financial year display column. So the value would say 2020-2021 for this financial year. And again, in this example, I'm setting the financial year to start in April. You just need to change the 4s in the code to the month number that your financial year starts at. This code is very similar to the financial year code I explained previously. And first, I use the add months function to -4 months from the date field date. And I use the number to text function to convert this number to a text string. Then I use ampersand, speech marks, dash, speech marks, ampersand to join it to the following year. And to get this following year, I use a similar code, but this time use the add months function to plus 12 -4 +1. Remember to replace the 4s in this code with your financial start month number. Now I'm going to use a simple bit of code to create the day of the week name column. Do this using the date.dayoftheweekname function to get the week name from the date field. Press OK. Oh, and now you can see that there's an error in the code. If this happens, you can change the code or fix the code in this box here. Next, I'll create the day of the week short column, and that will return MON for Monday, TUE for Tuesday, etc. I'll do this using the text.start function to bring back the first 3 letters from the week name. And there you go, it's added to the table, and I'll just change the field format. Next is the day of the week letter column, and this brings back the first letter of the day of the week. As I did with the previous column, you could use the text.start function to get the first letter of the weekday, but this would mean that Tuesday and Thursday would both return a T and Saturday and Sunday an S. Instead, I'm using a combination of an if statement and the text.start function. So, if the day of the week name from the date field equals Thursday, set the value to TH. Else, if the day of the week name from the date field equals Saturday, set the value to SA. Otherwise, use the text.start function to get the first letter of the week name. The next column I'm going to add is the day of week number, and I'm setting the week to start on a Monday. So the value for Monday will be 1 and the value for Sunday 7. You can select what day you want the week to start on. To get this value, use the date.dayofweek function. The first parameter is the date field, and the second is the day the week starts at. I'm using day.monday, but this can be changed. I also add 1, as by default this function numbers the days 0 to 6, and I want the numbering to be 1 to 7. Now I'm creating a weekend flag column. This is where the value is set to yes for a Saturday or Sunday and no for the other days of the week. You can change this if your weekend falls on a Friday, Saturday. I'll use an if statement and day of week name function. So if the day of week name equals Saturday, then set the value to yes. And the same if the day of week name equals Sunday, set it to yes, otherwise set the value to no. And you can see that the column has been created, and you can check that the flag has been set correctly in the table. The final column I'm adding is the week number. And in this example, I'm setting the week to start on a Monday, which you can change in the code. For this, I'm going to use the week of year function. The first parameter is the date field, and the second is the day the week starts at. And this is where you can change it to a different day of the week. And there you can see the final column has been added to the table. The great thing about using Power Query M code to create the date table is that it's reusable. You can copy the code for the whole table and paste it into a blank query in a new project. To get the table code, go to the Home menu and click on Advanced Editor. And here you can see the code for the whole table. The top few lines is the code we used at the beginning of this tutorial to set up the variables and create the date column. All the additional columns have been added after this. Simply copy this code and use it in a new project. One final step is to click on the Close and Apply button to load it into the Power BI window and data model. And here on the right is the table with all the column names displayed. I hope you found this tutorial useful and are now able to create your own Power Query M date table.